What's up, y'all? I wanted to make this video and just talk through my workflow for shooting product photos on a recent shoot that I did for my good buddy Kirk and his product line called With. It's really cool. Go check it out. Link is in the description. I wanted to make this video and talk about my workflow in shooting these product photos for Kirk, what the process was like going into that, and how simple it is to get really amazing product shots with pretty minimal gear. I really didn't have a lot, no more than I have right now to shoot this little video. I want to make this video to showcase my workflow and my process for shooting these awesome product photos, in hopes of giving you some tips and some resources on how to shoot your own product photos. I think that workflow is really important. It allows me to be able to do a lot of projects simultaneously, as well as see projects through to completion. And so I encourage you to think about your workflow as we go through this video. If we haven't met before, my name is Cole Hammontree. I am a photographer and cinematographer, as well as a designer and drone pilot. I want to talk about three main things with this video. First is lighting, second is camera settings, and the third is the actual workflow, delivery, and timeline of a shoot like this for a potential client. And I also want to break the idea that you need a whole bunch of gear or a big studio setup to do amazing work and to get amazing results and amazing photos that look professional, that look expensive. You don't need a lot of gear to be able to do that. And I want to break that idea with this video. So the first thing that I did is I really wanted to shoot these on like a white infinity wall and have it be super clean, super minimal. Kirk had a really big roll of paper in his shop. I was trying to figure out a way to hang it. And so I just took some painter's tape and hung it from the ceiling. It allowed me to get it close to the edge where I can work around on this big table. And if you didn't have a space like this, you can get some simple stands on Amazon and buy a cheap roll of paper and just do it over your dining room table or a counter or a desk. I wanted a really clean look, so shooting on white paper. I wanted to use a light source also that was daylight balanced. My light was 5600 Kelvin. So it's nice and daylight, clean, corporate. It's not anything crazy or too creative, as I wanted the products themselves to pop as they were colorful and very unique in and of themselves. I took my Godox on a C-stand, one C-stand, one light, one softbox, did a top down. What I ended up discovering about the light being that it's only 60 watts, I originally had the grid on the light, and you can see that I took that off. And then I also took off the inner layer of diffusion just to get more output out of the light. So I only had the main big diffusion on my light, and that ended up working out great. I killed the lights in the shop to get no ambient light, and I still shot with the window behind me to get more of a fill with that coming through and hitting the paper. The main part of the lighting source was just the top-down light with the softbox with one layer of diffusion on it. So I redid the paper backdrop because it was a little bit too close to this edge. So I just recut a piece of paper and made it longer so I have more to work with. Shooting on white paper, you'll get a little bit of a bounce from the actual light source back onto the product. And that infinity wall, by bringing the paper down and having it curve, allows it to be seamless. So you don't get any creases or anything in the background of your photos. That's that infinity wall look. And it's really easy to do with just a roll of paper. If you don't have a C-stand or a light or a softbox, you can achieve this very similarly by shooting next to a window. I might position the window off to the side and have it be more of a key light. The window would be helpful because it's going to be a big source. Even like this one behind me, it's a really big source. So if I get my product close to that, the bigger the light source is, the softer that light is going to be, as long as it's not hard light. So especially if it's an overcast day, that light coming in through the window is going to be gold to shoot some product photos next to. I did have our Nan tube lights. It was more just a slight fill. It really wasn't doing a whole lot, even at 100%. So something like that isn't really necessary. And I didn't get too creative on this because, again, I wanted to keep it clean and neat. But you can make those RGB. You can do some really cool backlights, multicolored backlights, depending on what product is again. But those Nans weren't doing too much. It was really mainly just the top-down softbox that was pulling all the weight for these. And then if you backlight anything, it just looks phenomenal if you do it right. But it's kind of hard to mess up backlighting a subject or a prop. You just take your main light source and put it behind
behind it. Depending on the texture of the product as well, you get some really cool light skips off of the product or subject or whatever you're shooting. And those light skips look amazing. You always kind of want to be shooting on the shadow side of your product or your subject. That's going to give you more of a wrap of the light around, and it's going to allow you to have a little bit more detail throughout the image, shooting on that shadow side. Next is my camera settings. I shot all of these photos on the Canon R5 with primarily the 100mm macro RF 2.8. That lens is phenomenal. It has stabilization in it as well as the R5 does internally, and so I can handheld that. You can see here I actually ended up putting my tripod away because it was just going to hinder me from being able to move quickly and shoot. Tripod's great for this kind of stuff, especially if you have a setup that you just want to keep stationary. But for me, I found that I love to be able to move around really quick and to change from going horizontal to vertical, as some of these were going to be posted on Instagram and need to be shot vertically. I wanted to be able to move very quickly between that, so I very quickly ditched the tripod and just shot everything handheld. The R5 is great because the massive sensor is massive, so I can punch in these and there's a lot of detail captured. You definitely don't need a camera like the R5, especially at that price point. You can do this with a very minimal camera setup, a simple DSLR, even with a kit lens. You can start doing this and focus on your lighting first. That's why I talked about it first. Focus on your lighting and then go into your camera settings and see what you can do and see what you can create. Something that was a little bit new to me getting the RF lens is that it wouldn't look very good to shoot this wide open, especially with a product shot that has different layers of depth behind it. I needed to really stop down. So I believe I was shooting at a 5.6, f8, and 9 or 11, and just pumping my ISO up. The R5's images, even at high ISO, look stellar. So I was up at 16, 3200 sometimes. And some of that might have been negated with a stronger light source, but it's just kind of what I had to do. And they turned out phenomenal still. So stop down your aperture, shoot wide open if it's going to work for you. And I did that on a select few shots where I just wanted one piece in focus and get that shallow depth of field. But for the most part, I was stopped down quite a bit to get everything in razor sharp tack focus. Also, because I was shooting on a white background, I didn't need to open up and have a super shallow depth of field because my background is completely solid and it's white. So the products themselves already pop off of the background. So I didn't need an additional shallow depth of field to make them pop. I was more focused on getting them in focus, keeping them in focus, and making the images look really sharp and crisp. I also used autofocus for everything essentially, and I went to the point autofocus, so the smallest box that you can select on the R5 for autofocus mode, and I could position that box anywhere that I wanted to and get exact focus on that part. So you'll see some of the images of the colored LEDs. I wanted to focus on one specific LED, pencil LED, and that autofocus allowed me to do that and select that one, and it'll land, stay there and lock, and then I can take my photo. So timeline. What does the workflow look like for all of this? This took me about 4 hours to go through all of these, play with two different sets. There was the colored set and the black and white set. It's nice to have minimal gear because I can set up very easily. I don't have a lot to set up. I can get rocking and rolling right away. And a lot of that comes from pre-production and planning on the front end. So I know that I'm going to show up. I'm going to set up like this. I already saw the shop. I already knew what I was going to do. So that saves a lot of time, especially if it's for a client, being able to show up and knock it out, not be guessing or hemming and hawing. And there can always be a little bit of that. I love the idea of still leaving your plans open-ended and leaving some space to change things, to try something new as you think of it on set. And that can lead to some really great things. I did that with the Nan lights. I ended up setting them down and completely shooting with the light directly behind the products, and they turned out great. So always leave a a little bit of space open to try things. It's difficult to do that, especially when it's for a client. Do your homework, do your research, do some pre-production on the front end, and make solid decisions going into the shoot on what you're going to do, how you're going to shoot it. At least just have a rough idea so that you're not scrambling when you get there and halting production. The biggest thing as far as workflow for me, and I can make a separate video about editing, so let me know if you guys want to see a video on how I edited these photos to get them to look this way. But I shot everything at the same white balance just to make sure it all looked cohesive and looked good. That's a huge thing, especially when I want these product photos to all look consistent over the span of when Kirk is using these, posting them on his website to sell them. I want them all to look consistent. So having the same white balance, having the same setup and lighting is really, really crucial in a workflow like this. So to recap, first, figure out your lighting, figure out what you want to do your homework, put in some effort on the pre-production side of things, figure out how you're going to light your subject. What gear do you need? Do you need to go out and buy new gear for this shoot? Can you use what you already have? Is this something for fun or is this for a client? Talk to your client and figure out the style that they want these shot in. Step 2 is figure out your camera settings, figure out what lenses you're gonna shoot with. I cannot emphasize enough, test all of this at home before you go out and shoot for a product or for a client. I always like to be prepared, so a lot of this I practiced at home before I went out and actually did these product photos. And I cannot emphasize that enough. Find something to practice on, whether that's coffee or little things around the house or plants, whatever it may be. Find something to practice on and get some really awesome photos. Share those and see what people think about it. Get some feedback on them and keep trying to level up your skills, your talents, and your abilities so that you can start making money with your work if that's something that you want to do. So that's all I got. It's kind of a whirlwind. Let me know if you have any questions on product photography. If you want to see a video of how I edited these photos, please let me know. Leave a like. It really helps me out, helps the YouTube algorithm out. Subscribe. There's a majority of people watching these videos that aren't subscribed to the channel yet. So click that subscribe button and ring the bell so you'll be notified when I post a new video like this to not miss out on any tips. Leave a comment and let me know what project you're working on, whether it's a product photo shoot or a video shoot or a design or whatever. Let me know. I want to hear what projects you guys are working on and your next big project or your next big idea. Leave a comment, let me know, and get out there and create.